Thank you so much. I'm going to put on some eyes here. I thank you for coming. In my travels with I was first hired by the Missouri Alliance for Historic Preservation in 2007 to serve as its first field representative. So it was my job to go out in the hinterlands, especially to communities underserved maybe by a preservation professional, and to kind of preach the gospel of historic preservation, if you will, in small town Missouri. Either through my work or through my own wanderlust and nosiness, have been to all of Missouri's 114 counties. Some of that work inspired historic Missouri Roadsides and my work on this book. One thing that I noticed about Missouri everywhere is that it is green and beautiful. This is a view of the Ozark mountain foothills in southwest Missouri. Has some awesomely beautiful views of the Mississippi River, this one from Pike County along the Mississippi in northeast Missouri. A beautiful scene even in the fallow Missouri floodplain just across the river here, across the Missouri River here from Jefferson City. In some places, and I have to mention this is near Salem, and it is on Highway 19, which is one of the states. It's not in the book, I'm afraid, but it's one of the states only designated scenic byways in Missouri. I recommend that as an additional tour for you all. There are maps offered by the Secretary of the State right outside, and I urge you to use those. I use a DeLorme map. One of the atlases, because it lets me see every tiny little road in the state, which I'm anxious to go and explore. But I collect postcards as well, so this WPA bridge has become an important historic part of the landscape as well. And this, I found the exact view from one of my postcard views when I was traveling down Highway 19 myself. On a rainy day, this is the Fourchon du Clos River Valley in St. Genevieve County in Bloomsdale, from another one of our vanishing historic places, a roadside park. I know many of us grew up having picnics in roadside parks as we traveled down the numbered highways before the interstate highways, and this is a vanishing resource in Missouri, actually listed on Missouri Preservation's list of endangered places several years ago. Another thing that I've noticed about Missouri is that its people are friendly everywhere, and even embodied in the name of this little place, Friendly Valley, in my own, in Perry County, my own stomping grounds where I grew up. Some places didn't appear as friendly. Although I do have to say, this was in Lawrence County, and the people were really awesome in Lawrence County as well. Not to be braggadocious, but I have been to Braggadocio, Missouri. Here's the post office of Braggadocio. Peculiar, where the odds are with you. Tightwad, don't ask for a loan at this bank. I've been, if you want to get down and dirty, to Cooter and Butts, of all places. This place struck me as very curious, and I'm sorry you can't read the sign over the store, the entrance to the store very well. It's the Lupus Store. What can I say? It hurt just being here. You know? I've seen the biggest duck whirligig in Mound City. Outside of the motel here in Mound City was a sign that said, "Please no feathers or duck carcasses in the public trash cans." I've seen the biggest ice cream cone in Missouri near Barnhart at Jimmy's Custards. Of course, the King City biggest gas pump in Missouri. The biggest 8-ball on Highway 50 here in Tipton. The biggest soda bottle in the what's called the Bottle District in St. Louis, best soda bottle. The biggest fork in Springfield. The biggest rocking chair on Route 66 near Cuba. The biggest pecan And actually, they claim it the world's largest, although I heard when I posted that somewhere on social media, I was reprimanded that the biggest pecan is now in Texas, but we're still claiming the largest pecan in Brunswick, Missouri, which, who knew, is pecan territory in Missouri. The road from there, US 24, is lined with pecan trees, and there's Miller Pecan Farm, which we'll see later, offering nothing but pecans in its store. Another thing that I noticed universally about Missouri and about rural America, it's emptying out. When factory farms left, people left. When the railroad left, this is Burlington Junction in northwest Missouri. The train tracks don't even exist near the depot in Burlington Junction. When the trains left, the people left. When rail traffic or river traffic left, more people left. When agribusiness took over from small farms, more people have left. But I heard actually on 1A on NPR today that there's a new movement back to our roots, back to small town. And sort of my work here in the construction of this book is to urge people to learn about the history of small town Missouri and appreciate their roots and go back to their roots. So this is, I call this guy every time I see him, I say, you're the poster child for historic Missouri roadsides. This is Scotty Walker. Scotty Walker is the fourth generation of Walkers to own Walker's Variety Store in Holden, Missouri, over in Johnson County. I was asked in my official capacity as Missouri Preservation's executive director to come and give them some advice on whether I thought their downtown might be eligible for listing on the National Register of Historic Places. You know, that provides for the utilization of the historic preservation tax credits and really means a lot to the rejuvenation of Missouri's small towns. So I said, I want to meet some of the people here along the street. Of course, I thought it was historic and it merited being listed on the National Register. You can see over on the side, the first thing I encountered was hanging plants from the canopy outside. There were bedding plants. There were all kinds of garden materials outside. You can see his shop small sign here. Right behind him is the Radio Shack section of his store, selling small electronics. This is a candy store over here. He had an aisle of a soda pop shop, which had about 150 different kinds of bottled soda pops that you could pick out. He had rows of housewares. He had rows of groceries. From where he was standing, if you looked on the other side of the room, there were bolts of fabric, sewing machines, hanging above them were bicycles. I looked at him and I asked, "You don't have a Walmart here, do you?" No, they don't, and they don't want one. And I think it's high time for us to abandon the big box, and it's important for us, especially for the rejuvenation of Missouri's small towns, is for us to start doing business with each other again. The Waltons already have enough money, folks. It's important for us to support our friends and neighbors and their enterprises to help them be successful as well. I'm sorry, Waltons. So my book is set up sort of like, it looks, you can see it looks at first like it's a coffee table book with lots of pictures, and it does have lots of pictures. But it's also a history book. It tells you a little bit of history about each one of the towns that you go through on 5 road trips on 2-lane highways. I think you have to go on the interstate highway for 1.5 or 2 miles on one of the trips, but the rest of them are exclusively on 2-lane roads. But like a travel book, I list places to eat and drink and stay and visit and events that happen in these small towns. I only list businesses that are owned by Missourians. So I'm going to take a little a road trip here for you. One of my 5 road trips. This is the Mostly 24 trip. Mostly 24 travels from Excelsior Springs on the northwest side of the state, clear across the state to New London, Missouri. It begins on Missouri Highway 10, one of the original federal highways of 1926, which originated in Michigan, extended to Kansas City, and though it now goes halfway through the state of Colorado. Much of the eastern part of this tour is what is known as Little Dixie. It was settled by migrant Southerners. These Southerners were farmers and horse breeders, and many of the towns, including Huntsville, Madison, and Paris, are still horse breeding towns. So we start in Excelsior Springs. This is a reproduction of the Crystal Lithia Spring Pavilion, recreated in Excelsior Springs, which was founded upon the discovery of mineral-rich springs and the arrival of railroads. Laid out in 1880, it fell from favor as a health resort on rail lines, obviously, and the old hotels and sanatoriums lay empty for many years. Though some were lost, the WPA-era Hall of Waters and the magnificent Elms Hotel remained. This is the inside of the Elms, which has a really nice spa still. That's where you can take the water still. Excelsior Springs, I have to say, is a town that gets that. I notice at the same time that towns are emptying out and there's less interest in them, that the towns that really capitalize on their history, they get the history of their communities, they benefit from this tourism, from cultural heritage tourism, as I call it. Has anybody here been to Excelsior Springs? I collected my postcards from there for many years and finally went to visit. And the Hall of Waters, if you haven't been there, is truly amazing. There is a bar inside this place, which is now their city hall. But the bar, notoriously, I think it's 75 feet long, and it's the longest bar in the world serving only water. I think it had 20 different kinds of spring water at one time. Heading east, from here, Richmond County, originally much larger, 5 to 6 counties were formed from Ray County. It was established in 1820 and named for Richmond, Virginia. This is its courthouse on the square. Its cemetery contains, I always say, this town's famous for its dead people. Its cemetery contains the remains of guerrilla Confederate Captain Bloody Bill Anderson, also Captain Benjamin Brown, who was killed in the Civil War Battle of Wilson's Creek. Oliver Cowdery and Austin and David Whitmer, 2 of the 3 witnesses to the Book of Mormon, as well as former Missouri Governor Austin King, are buried in the city cemetery in this tiny town. Many monuments also on the courthouse lawn, including one to Alexander William Donovan, who refused a government order to execute Mormon leaders and ended the Mormon conflict with only a few casualties in Missouri. 3 other monuments to the county's war dead are included on the courthouse lawn. This is one of the beautiful pressed tin storefronts on the town square in Ray County in Richmond. About 12 miles to the east on Highway 24, Lexington, most famous for the Battle of Lexington and the famous Cannonball Hall, which remains in one of the columns in its courthouse on the portico. Established in 1820, this quickly became a major river port. The Anderson House here, which was sort of the backdrop for the Battle of Lexington, is now a state historic site. And there are many beautiful antebellum homes here, especially here on this one on Highland Avenue. This is Mulligan's Bar and Grill, or was when I was there. Anybody want to take a guess as to what it originated as? That's a good guess. Here's a hint. See these here? I don't know if you can see them very well. They're headstones. This was a monument company, and when they left, they just left the headstones out in front. And now, moving a little bit east, 21 miles east to be exact, to Waverly, Missouri, which used to be a bustling river port, shipping produce, including apples and peaches. Once home to Confederate General Joseph Shelby, a monument here in Shelby Park commemorates him. This is the St. Thomas Presbyterian Church of 1853. You'll notice in a lot of my photos, a lot of buildings that may need another coat of paint or look like they're, some rusted out automobiles and things like that. And I think there's beauty in pleasant decay. But I also feel like if I recognized something as historic, that maybe other people would appreciate it as well. This, the last time I was there, and I should get a new slide, is completely repainted, and the town has repurposed this as a community events venue, and they do community theater here, so I'm really proud of the people of Waverly, a tiny town. Moving also on the trip, Carrollton, the county seat of Carroll County. This is the Carrollton Post Office from 1914, which was designed by James Knox Taylor, who was the architect for the Department of the Treasury at the time. The Carroll County Sheriff's Home and Jail are said to be one of America's most haunted. Its sheriff was killed here. Frank James was a guest at the jail. Commercial artist Fred Geary is from Carrollton. He worked for the Santa Fe Railroad's Fred Harvey restaurant system. Interesting story about the La Bella Motel. There's a La Bella bed and breakfast in an old mansion downtown Carrollton. And a young couple actually run a successful bed and breakfast there. And I think this was called the Sundowner Motel at one time. So based on the success of their bed and breakfast, they bought the motel and renovated the motel. So while I have to put a disclaimer that the places that I list in the book, the eat, stay places, they are places that are open and owned by Missourians. They are not recommended by me. And I do your own research. The first time in my capacity as field representative, I went to Springfield, and I thought, wow, this is going to be awesome. It is a part of old Route 66, and I'm going to stay at one of those old Route 66 motels. It was a flea bag, folks. People were cleaning their fish on the parking lot, and there was partying going on, and there was a leak in my roof. And so I went to the hotel manager, and I said, I'm feeling this isn't a really good fit for me. But he said, oh no, we'll find you another room. So I did what I've learned to do at the La Bella. I asked to see the room before they saw my credit card. So, good rule and point. But definitely, you should really give these places a chance. They're owned most of the time by mom and pop and small business people, and some of them are very quite viable places. Now moving further east, the DeWitt. The town of DeWitt, which begins Pecan territory. This is a little historic farm that leads to the Miller Pecan farm that I was telling you about. DeWitt is most famous for its altercation with the Mormons here in 1838 in conjunction with the Mormon War. Mormons negotiated a surrender and left on September 20th, 1838. Moving further west, the town of Brunswick, which is actually the pecan capital of Missouri. The Missouri Farmers Association, or MFA, was started here in 1914. Lewis and Clark camped here on the river in a state park where you can still camp today in the same camp site as Lewis and Clark. This is I just thought this place looked frozen in time. This is Harmon's Sinclair station on Main Street in Brunswick. Does anybody recognize this man?
Sterling Price?
Sterling Price. 11 miles to the east is the town of Keatsville, home to General Sterling Price. A monument by A.G. Newman of 1915 in Price Park is here. Also home to Maxwell D. Taylor, who was chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff in the Kennedy administration. This guy, I haven't really had too many problems with people thinking that I was snooping on them but this man came out. He was really curious as to why I was taking a picture of his old filling station. And this is in Keatsville. His family bought the filling station. They have a concrete business. And basically, they bought the station so that they could use the tanks to refill their concrete trucks. But when he found out that I was a historian and I was taking pictures of historic buildings, the guy came out with a treasure trove of everything. He had bills of sale, matchbook covers, calendars, everything that had been produced by the owners of this filling station through the years. So it was amazing that he saved the archive and appreciated it. 15 miles, or a few miles just east of here, Salisbury, a town of beautiful homes on Broadway, and the home of the original B&B Theater. The old Lyric Theater is here, which began the B&B Theater chain here in Missouri. 15 miles now further east, Huntsville, the county seat of Randolph County, which was eclipsed in population by its larger neighbor Moberly over the years. Moberly is a big railroad town with the Katy, Wabash, and Sheridan and Randolph railroads having their homes here, some of them still. This is a picture of the 4th Street Theater. One of Missouri Preservation's board members was really instrumental in getting this theater renovated. They did this entirely grassroots, and she was proud to say that they had not borrowed one dime in the restoration. Every bit of the funds had come from local people in Moberly. Now 14 miles to the east, Madison, a small town with a big saddlebred horse history. There are still four major saddlebred horse stables here. Not bad for a town of 536 people. Now, further to the east, this is actually a little picturesque. It was the caretakers. It was the caretakers building in the middle of the Paris City Cemetery. Paris is the county seat of Monroe County, platted in 1831. It has the last Missouri courthouse constructed with a dome. The Paris Mercury was founded here, and it is one of the oldest in Missouri, publishing since 1837. Now moving a little bit further east, this is actually what it looked like when it was outside, but this is in Florida, Missouri. Does anybody know who was born in Florida? Mark Twain, Samuel Clemens. And this looks very much like Samuel Clemens' boyhood home, but you know, preservation changes throughout the years, and the original cabin is in this spaceship of a building, but still accessible, and you can still go and climb and walk through the rooms of his cabin inside the Mark Twain State Historic Site. Perry is another really small town that really understands the importance of its history and tourism. This is one of several antique stores here in pressed tin storefronts. It has several cafes, one of which I highlighted on my Facebook page this week, a big museum, and of course it's really close to the Mark Twain Lake for its recreational value. And then finally, the last stop on the mostly 24, New London, the county seat of Rawls County, originally settled by Sac and Fox Indians who were forced out in 1804. Two major trails, Indian camps, and many campsites have been excavated here. This is a picture of its 1859 courthouse, one of only two Greek Revival courthouses remaining in Missouri, the other one in Lexington, the one with the cannonball in its column. This actually is not supposed to be here. Missouri Highway 79, this is the River Road. The River Road Tour starts in St. Charles County and proceeds northward on Highway 79 through Lincoln, Pike, Marion, and Lewis and Clark counties. It starts out in western St. Charles County, goes through Old Monroe, a couple of really interesting story about this picture. Someone stopped me after one of my presentations and said that her grandma lived in this building in the center. And I hear great stories from people all the time, even just when I'm traveling. But she said, Grandma rented out this side and this side to renters, but she had a little store here, a little general merchandise store. And just to the north of here was a little grocery store. And what they would do is they had a very talented dog. And they would tell people, if you throw the dog a nickel, he'll go buy his lunch. And people were like, yeah, right. If you threw the dog a nickel, he would pick up the nickel, take it over to the grocery store next door, put it down on the floor, go pick up a can of kennel ration, and come back home every time. This is a picture of a Ford in Foley, I call it. It called out to me because my first car was a 1954 Ford. I have been able to dig up history on virtually every town that I've been in, except for Foley, darn it. I looked into the histories of Lincoln County, tried to find local historians, and then, as luck would have it, one of our members a couple of months ago asked me if I would take a look at listing their farm in Lincoln County on the National Register. She handed me the abstract to her property, and there, the largest landowner in Lincoln County was Thomas Foley. This is the little town of Ada, named after the town's founders, Anne and Ada. And heading a little bit further north, the town of, a really picturesque town, the town of Clarksville, threatened by a lot of flooding. And you'll see again, my trying to lure people to this place. It had a for sale sign. I thought, wow, what a great little showboat Gothic house, maybe somebody will buy it. So I put it in the book. This is one of the downtown streets. It's a very active little town with a very lively artisan community. Just to the north of here is a little place called the Village of the Blue Rose. Has anybody ever heard of the Village of the Blue Rose? This lady has. It's owned by this lady, Rose Gronemeyer. Rose retired from school teaching several years ago. She was a special education teacher in the local school. She was very concerned about what might happen to her students and that they're living fulfilling lives after they left school. She opened a bed and breakfast, a thrift store, and a restaurant called the Village of the Blue Rose, and employs developmentally disabled a group of people here to help her run the B&B and the restaurant. It's really truly remarkable. Some of the people live on campus there, and some of them commute into work every day. But it's really an awesome place, and I invite you to go and patronize Rose. Further north in Pike County, this is the town of Louisiana. Louisiana, it's not the county seat. Bowling Green, it was once here, but Bowling Green is more centrally located in Pike County, and so the county seat was moved there. But you can see there was this was a very prosperous town, and its main street, which is called Georgia Street, has some really beautiful, intact Victorian streetscape. And as you head west, there are the homes, some really beautiful mansions of some of the earlier settlers of the town. On the left-hand side, again, I think that the caption in the first edition read that this was the old Alton Chicago Depot, and it was waiting for a savior, and by golly, we found one. A local family was able to buy this last year, and they're working on it. We've been helping them through a historic preservation tax credit application so that they can turn this into a restaurant. Heading further north, this is we're now in Marion County. This is the town of Hannibal, most famous for its most famous resident, Samuel Clemens or Mark Twain. And then the county seat of Marion County, again, one of those county seats that was kind of eclipsed by a larger town in population. This is Palmyra, named for the ancient Syrian city of Palmyra. Beautiful courthouse by P.H. Weathers, and again, the architecture on the right, an eye house. Most of the people came from the south here and brought their building traditions along with them. Heading up Highway 61, a little barn education. This is a bank barn on Highway 61. And then nearly the terminus, this is Canton, Missouri. Canton is home to Culver Stockton College, which was the first truly coeducational college in America, I found when I was doing my research. It was, and in its charter, it guarantees equal opportunity for both men and women in higher education. Its most significant historic sites are these two African American historic sites. One, an AME church, and the other one, a school building in the downtown. This is the El Camino Real trip, Highway 61, which leads from St. Louis to down in the Bootheel to New Madrid, Missouri. This El Camino Real literally means King's Highway, and both the French, when they held the territory of Louisiana, and the Spanish called it Le Chemin de Roy, which also meant King's Highway. And basically, this route, which used to be Missouri Highway 25, is now U.S. Highway 61. It really was it was an Indian trail, but it was established as a road so that the new owners of Louisiana, the French, when they owned Louisiana, settled St. Louis in 1764. But when the Spanish purchased Louisiana, they wanted, of course, a new capital of Spain to be in Missouri, and it was down here in southeast Missouri, New Madrid. So it goes through several towns from St. Louis, and again, closely follows the Mississippi River, only heading south. This is Route 100, the Lewis and Clark and Gottfried Duden trip, it's called. And this one is the Osage Hills. This trip starts over here in Gray Summit, Missouri, and goes mostly Highway 100 here, which was a tiny part of the Lewis and Clark Trail, but also a place of huge German settlement. Gottfried Duden, a German who considered Germany overbuilt and overpopulated in the 1820s, came to Missouri. He published his book. It was a travelogue, basically, of his exploits along the Missouri River, and was intended to entice Germans to the Missouri River Valley here, and indeed it did. And this is finally the Osage Hills and Prairies trip. It starts on a part of Route 66 over here in Lebanon. It goes over U.S. Highway 30, or State Highway 32, it goes through Bolivar and Buffalo, and of course Halfway, which is named because it's halfway between those two cities. It goes up to Fairplay, and then heads south to the groves, I call them, Walnut Grove and Ash Grove, and then follows State 96, which is actually an original part of Route 66 down here. It goes through Halltown over to Carthage, Missouri, which is a really, truly amazing little town. famous for its limestone. It's actually still quarried here, though not for building stone. Carthage stone was, some people called it Carthage marble because the Carthage stone was so dense that it could be polished to look like marble. So a lot of the windowsills that you see around Missouri that look like they are marble are actually Carthage stone. And then it heads up the Jefferson Highway back up to Lamar, the birthplace of President Truman. Goes over through Minden Mines, and this was all Indian territory. This is where the Osage Indians inhabited and lived in Missouri for hundreds of years before they were removed to northwest Missouri in what is now the Platte Purchase. But anyway, the tour goes on up and ends in Nevada, Missouri, in northern Missouri. Here, in the second edition, where I had 6 tours of Missouri in the first edition, in the second edition, short side story here. We sold out of the first edition of Historic Missouri Roadsides, and the publisher, Reedy Press, did a second printing. No sooner than they received it at their warehouse that there was a warehouse fire. They lost 350,000 volumes in the fire. So since it was going to have to be dusted off, little motels and little restaurants come and go pretty quickly in small towns. So we knew we were going to have to update that part of it if we were going to do another printing. So the publisher, Josh Stevens, said, well, why don't we think about changing it up a little bit? And so in the second edition, we added 6 destinations, places that aren't necessarily on one of the road trips, but that you might want to go for a weekend staycation or maybe a week-long vacation in Missouri. They include St. Joseph in far northwest Missouri. What am I looking at here? Glasgow, Missouri. Has anybody been to Glasgow here? Beautiful little town on the Missouri River. Great for its architecture. The Boonslick, which consists basically of Booneville, Blackwater, Arrow Rock, and Sedalia, the home of the State Fair. Fulton, I was just there on the way down here to enjoy the Churchill Memorial, and of course I encourage people there to also go to the capital city and appreciate what the capital city has to have and offer. And then Arcadia Valley, which consists of 3 little towns that are all about a mile away from each other. Arcadia, Pilot Knob, and Ironton, which is the county seat of Iron County. So first of all, St. Joe, a city of huge homes and distinctive architecture thanks to the firm of Eckel and Mann and Harvey Ellis, one of its chief architects. Eckel came here from Switzerland around 1860. This is one of the homes that he and Harvey Ellis designed, which is now Barbossa's Mexican restaurant. He also designed the City Hall, the Livestock Exchange, and courthouses in Maryville, the Nottoway County Courthouse in Maryville, the Gentry County Courthouse in Albany, and the Atchison County Courthouse in Rockport. He began his career in the architectural firm of P.H. Maher, and this, you can tell when you're in St. Joe that something huge, something much larger was planned for this town than it actually happened. And of course, remember I said when they were a big trail town, they were a river traffic town, and they were a railroad town. And of course, after the Oregon Trail was not needed anymore, and the Pony Express wasn't needed anymore, the town continued to empty out, and I think St. Joe lost about 70% of its downtown buildings in the 1960s. What remains, though, is really amazing. Here's the old sign from the Pony Express Motel. The motel's not there anymore, but they did save the sign. This is one of their museums. The St. Joe Museum Complex owns the old Wyeth Tootle Mansion and has their headquarters in the mansion. But the whole town is just rife with beautiful, huge Victorian houses that are going begging. I have not, for the life of me, figured out why Kansas City hasn't realized that this would be a great bedroom community. The housing is huge, beautiful, and affordable. Now moving to the Arcadia Valley, there's 3 towns in Iron County: Ironton, Arcadia, and Pilot Knob. Originally thought to be full of iron deposits, more stone was found here than anything else, especially granite has been more successful. And you can see the native stone everywhere. It's ubiquitous in the valley, including gate posts, which appear everywhere in the town, and even real estate developments. Well, this is the huge boulders in Elephant Rock State Park, and it's great because it has Elephant Rock State Park, it has Johnson Shut-In State Park, it has Tom Sauk Park, which hosts the tallest mountain in Missouri, Tom Sauk Mountain, at 1,772 feet, and also has Clark National Forest. So it's just a great place to go and vacation. And speaking of vacation, remember I said the stone was ubiquitous. This whole real estate development was constructed with this native stone. And actually a couple has purchased the entire real estate. This is a fraction of what is there. It's just really a picturesque little development. And these are offered as vacation rentals. You can go there and stay there. You can even see the limestone along, this is Highway 72 leading out of town toward Jackson, Missouri, and you can see the stone going past Lake Killarney, even in the abutments along the highway here. This is there was a pretty significant battle, and actually there's another state park that I forgot to mention, and that is Fort Davidson State Park. Fort Davidson was a Civil War fort where a significant battle was fought, turning back the Confederate forces, which were headed towards St. Louis, and the Confederates were soundly defeated down here in Arcadia Valley and retreated. A beautiful Carpenter Gothic, the Episcopal Church there, and a folly that I thought was really picturesque in another person's front yard. Fulton. I have to say, this is fodder for my, as an architectural historian, this is fodder for my notorious trick question in architectural history, and that is, what is the oldest building in Missouri? The oldest building in Missouri was constructed in 1766 in London and moved to Fulton in the 1960s. Originally settled by Osages who had migrated from the east, Fulton's American settlers came from Tennessee, Kentucky, and Virginia. Decidedly southern, it's a several county area known as Little Dixie again. In 1861, the county avoided what they thought might be a siege by the Union Army. In October of that year, they signed a non-aggression agreement with the Union, allowing the county to be somewhat of an autonomous territory, earning it thus the nickname, the Kingdom of Callaway. The nearby town of Kingdom City taking its name from the kingdom, and many organizations such as the Kingdom of Callaway Historical Society still bear the name. Most well known for the visit to Westminster College here in 1949 by Sir Winston Churchill, Prime Minister, who from the college delivered his Sinews of Peace speech, more popularly known as the Iron Curtain speech. To memorialize Churchill's visit, the 1760s London Church, the Church of St. Mary the Virgin Aldermanbury, left in ruins after World War II, was moved here and reconstructed stone by stone. The church is Missouri's, obviously, oldest building. There is also some awesome Victorian architecture to behold in this town as well. This one, obviously, I'm trying to seek recognition for. Again, that local heritage tourism is alive here in what they now call the Brick District. They still have original brick streets. It makes this town a unique place. It has a unique sense of place, and again, enlivened by new businesses and rediscovering its history. Anybody here in the DAR, Daughters of American Revolution? Thank you. The Daughters of American Revolution have been doing historic preservation since before there was a historic preservation. These three markers are named for the trail, which extended from St. Charles to Howard counties. The Boonslick Trail was used by the sons of Daniel Boone for transporting salt that was manufactured on the Salt Creek near Richmond to St. Charles. The town of Franklin, at the center of the Boonslick, and now not much more than a place name due to repeated flooding, was the trailhead of the Santa Fe Trail. Markers along the trail were placed in the teens by the DAR. At the center of the four towns covered here in the Boonslick is Boonville, the county seat of Cooper County, its courthouse designed by Robert Kirsch in 1913. There's, again, beautiful mansions overlooking the Missouri River, including the home of former head of the University of Missouri and the fellow who established its School of Journalism, Walter Williams. You can see it also, you can see there also was significant Civil War history here, the Battle of Boonville. It is said that the name Boonville, which doesn't have an E in it, was a printing error by a Civil War soldier. But there are, as I said, many fine homes, including the Walter Williams home. Notable residents include Joseph Franklin Rutherford, who founded the Jehovah's Witnesses, who just met in St. Louis this week in their international convocation. Former treasurer and governor of the state of Missouri, Lon Best Stevens. Not too far away, the town of Rocheport. Lewis and Clark noticed a settlement of Sauk, Muskogee, and Iowa Indians here in 1804. French for Rocky Port, it was long a trading port for natives and the new white settlers. Platted in 1826, the Whig Party held its state convention here in 1840. Confederate guerrilla William T. Bloody Bill Anderson proclaimed this as his capital during the Civil War. One of Frommer Travel Magazine's 10 coolest American small towns and Southern Living's best tiny town in Missouri. William Least Heath Moon, who chronicled his travels through small-town America in the book Blue Highways, is from Rocheport. The town's antebellum meeting hall is here on the left, and an African-American school on the right, repurposed as a bed and breakfast on the right. Not too far away, the town of Arrow Rock, which has an incredible history for a town which the permanent residents, as of the 2010 census, number less than 50 in this town. The two most noticeable places here are the Lyceum Theater, a former church building now offering summer theater and attracting Broadway actors, and the J. Houston Tavern, which is the oldest inn and restaurant in Missouri, opening in 1834. There's lots of history per square foot in a town whose permanent residents, I said, number less than 50. Dr. John Sappington, who lived from 1776 to 1856, is credited with developing quinine as a treatment for malaria. William Becknell, known as the father of the Santa Fe Trail, was from Arrow Rock, as was Meredith Miles Marmaduke, who served as Missouri governor in 1844. Governor Claiborne Fox Jackson, who lived from 1806 to 1862, who supported Missouri's secession from the Union, was from here, as was Missouri's most famous artist, ruralist, luminous painter, George Caleb Bingham, who is also from Arrow Rock. And this part of the state park is Bingham's home and studio on the right. I stop and take, I tell people I endanger the life of myself and others on a daily basis by stopping to take photos of any number of things along the road, but I'm enamored of the old calabooses, the old stone jails. This one, most famous for never, ever having hosted a guest. An interesting home here that looks like it's made of stone, but it's actually made of wood blocks to make it look a little more substantial. Its Victorian fence was not Victorian, but placed here in 1984 when the film Tom Sawyer was made in Arrow Rock. This is the little town of Blackwater. Population 162 at the last census. Blackwater is a thriving town offering tourists a fun place to stay on the Lamine River, or the Lamine River, I'm sorry. The Ironhorse Hotel shown here was an old railroad hotel that was renovated using the state and federal historic preservation tax credit. The town boasts a telephone museum, which you see here on the right, and a community theater and a 1903 Gothic Revival church. Glasgow. On the Missouri River, you can see very steep hills overlooking the Missouri River. This is one picturesque Missouri River town. Platted in 1835, named for St. Louis merchant James Glasgow, it quickly became a shipping point for mid-Missouri crops on river barges and railroads. Many architecturally distinctive buildings, including the Italianate Lewis Library, begun as Lewis College in 1867. When the college closed, it became the public library and is the oldest library building in continuous use in the state of Missouri. There are several old church buildings, including the Gothic-inspired Glasgow Presbyterian Church of 1861, now the local history museum on the left, and the Greek Revival-style Campbell Chapel AME Church, a historic African-American church here on the right. This, again, had been listed on Missouri's list of endangered historic places. The Campbell Chapel, through grassroots efforts of the local community, was restored and is used again as a church in Glasgow. And you can see some of the really magnificent Victorian homes that overlook the Missouri River from Glasgow. And then finally, Sedalia, originally inhabited by Osage Indians, later the Shawnees. George Rapine Smith was the first American settler, the county seat of Pettis County. This current courthouse, designed by W.E. Hulse, was completed in 1925. And beyond the gates, the Art Deco gates of the State Fair, if you haven't been there, you just missed it. But you haven't lived until you have gone to the swine house to see people's prize pigs, to see any number of different kinds of chickens on display. I walked in one house that had rows of pies waiting to be judged. It is really a slice of American life for you to behold. You can take the train there, actually, from here. The train will drop you 2 blocks away from this hotel, the restored Bothwell Hotel, a 1920s hotel in the downtown. It's a great place to stay that I do recommend. And across the street, again, put in the book because I was hoping it would find a savior. It was just, the trust building was just purchased by a developer. So we're really happy to see that. This is the parsonage of the Episcopal Church on Broadway, and one of the really beautiful Victorian homes just west of downtown in Sedalia. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is my dog and pony show for historic Missouri Roadsides. I have books here for sale if anybody's interested. I would be happy to sign them for you. They're $39.95. I can take a cash, check, credit card, and I also very much welcome taking any questions.